Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. If you enjoy the videos here, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the Word Balloon YouTube channel, and of course, if you enjoy the audios and the videos, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, patreon.com/wordballoon. Well, welcome back everybody. It's time again for another Word Balloon Live. This is John Suntress, and really happy to welcome back an old friend. And it's I miss him living in Chicago, although we'd still be long distance right now with the shutdown.
Right.
But it's Skottie Young, everybody. Hey, Skottie.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Doing all right, man. It's great to see you. And I know you're on full father duty right now.
I am.
Casey's handling other family stuff and everything. But my best to both of you and the boys and the dog.
We got one might be back. Yep, I got one back here. You know, great parenting here. iPad screen time is unlimited. But yeah, we got Penny somewhere around here, but yeah, it's a full-time schedule lately. But no, man, it's good to talk to you again. We got to catch up in Chicago, you know, before all the shutdown, which was awesome. And I say it so often. I miss that city.
Dude, we miss you. And yeah, it's but again, I understand, and I'm glad that things are going well. And it was a great hang at C2E2. I keep calling it the last con standing.
Yep, it's true.
Sadly, it was. And then, literally days later, I get this in the mail.
Yeah,
which was outstanding, or maybe it was maybe it was before it. I can't remember now, Skottie. But
you probably would have got it before because it came out, I think, like 2 days after C2E2, which was frustrating because I was like, oh man, if that would have only been if we would have had it before the show, you know, I could have had it at the table. But
true.
Yeah, like that following week.
Strange Academy, the brand new Marvel book that Skottie is writing. Umberto Ramos is drawing the book.
Yeah.
I say this not only because I showed it, but also because, you know, we are audio as well as video, Skottie.
I love it. We're so tech now, John. You're all grown up.
Because I talk to you and get good advice from you, and truly, as I told you before we went on the air, I appreciate our skull sessions.
Yeah.
And just your point of view, and you know, honestly, you're a good guy to take the Word Balloon temperature with and everything. Much in one of your old friends that is no longer with us, Mike Waringo, was one of my early guys that I would go. Hey,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. One of my first mentor. Yeah, I knew he was gonna be. It's like he's quiet all day until all of a sudden I'm on. He's like gonna start acting a fool.
It's all good, man.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. But so Strange Academy. Let's talk about that now. And this is great because it's a great combination of classic Marvel characters along with a bunch of new characters from familiar places. So tell me about the concept.
The concept is there's a young girl, Emily Bright, who grows up with an affinity for magic and mystical arts, but doesn't really know what that means. You know, it's kind of like sometimes growing up with an artistic talent or an affinity for music or any of these things that you like come natural, but you're kind of confused because you're like, what do I do with this? And if one of your parents aren't that way, you know, there's weird things to deal with that. So Emily grows up from birth and has these weird magical abilities and finally one day decides that she sees this, the only person that she understands, she didn't even know what to call herself. Is she a witch? Is she a sorcerer? A magician? But she knows that she sees this figure on TV from time to time saving the universe, and it's Doctor Strange. So she decides to write this guy similar to, you know, if I were to want to be a musician or a comic book artist, I might write in and to a comic book artist and ask them how they did it. And she finds herself invited to a new school. It's called Strange Academy, and it is a school started up by Dr. Strange and Dr. Voodoo and Zelma, who's the Marvel's awesome magical librarian. And it is a school to start training the next generation of, you know, the users of the mystic arts and sorcerers of all the Marvel universe. And really, it just kind of came from me loving coming of age stories. Anybody who's read or followed my career knows that that's definitely one of my favorite things to do is coming of age stories. So, when I started thinking about the idea, I loved Generation X coming up. You know, that was one of my favorite books when I was younger, which was just a play on the original X-Men content. But what I loved about Generation X, and what I always wanted to kind of try to do at some point in my career, is I loved about Generation X is all the characters were so weird. Like, they truly were weird, you know? When I grew up reading before Generation X came out and I looked at X-Men, the X-Men were always said to be different, but they were so awesome. Like, they're like beautiful people, you know, they're like strapping and ripped and buff and great looking and have really cool powers that doesn't, like, on the surface, doesn't really make them that much of an outcast. It just makes them awesome, you know? Like, oh, poor Cyclops. He blasts things with his eyes and also looks like Brad Pitt. Like, oh. And then Generation X,
exactly.
You know, yeah, like, oh, then Generation X comes along, and the way that Chris Pacello depicted these characters, there's a character named Skin, and he literally, his mutant ability was he had excess skin. You know, there was a young girl named Husk who had to learn how to control not to shed her skin, and she had no idea what the skin underneath that layer would be. So sometimes it might be metal, sometimes it might be slut, you know, is constantly changing. So it truly kind of, for me, I related to that because it truly is closer to what it feels like to be a teenager when you feel like you're on the outside of things. And so I always liked that. And then I grew up liking to tell those stories. And one day I kind of started to think about projects and what I might like to do. And it kind of occurred to me that there was a big resurgence in cosmic books over the years, where obviously, you know, they were ramping up. You know, I was privy to the Jonathan parts of the upcoming X-Men stuff before everybody was, so I knew that was getting ready to get a big resurgence. We found all the street books with Daredevil over the years, the street level books with Power Man and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. All these other elements of the Marvel Universe had kind of this resurgence. But there was one element that I feel like only ever took place in one book, really, and it was the magic side. And that kind of only took place in a Doctor Strange book. And so I was like, I feel like there'd be magic users in every corner of the Marvel Universe. And I thought a school setting would be a really cool way to go grab some young characters from all the realms that we love in Marvel. So Limbo and Asgard and, you know, the idea of having a magical frost giant going to school with two Asgardian twins, you know, what's that dynamic? And it's somebody from Weird World and a fairy from Otherworld, and, you know, just basically just grabbing all the fun toys, like going to all the fun playgrounds and then creating a character in that playground and bringing them to one area. And so that's really the general concept. I mean, it's kind of like my way to play around and do Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you know, the Scooby Gang, right? Like the cool,
totally,
all the kind of like coming of age, action, adventure, love, romance, comedy stuff we all grew up with, you know.
Well, and a lot of these subsets are already in conflict, like having the Frost Giant with the Asgardians, and I'm really excited to see, especially attending Doctor Strange's Academy, the son of Dormammu.
Yeah, Doyle Dormammu, man. Doyle is my favorite character to write, because I think there's so much expectation and assumption when you have the son of Dormammu walk in, right? And I think that my favorite thing about that is such a, you know, we often look inward towards kids about, you know, oh, this power and how does it affect me and blah blah blah. But there's also the other thing that there is legacy, you know, and some kids lean into that and some kids want to subvert it. And I think Doyle's a really, really good vehicle to play around with both sides of that. Like, is he gonna try to please his dad? You know, is he gonna become his dad? Is he gonna fight against being his dad? It's a fun character to have created and play around with, for sure. And of course, like, Umberto just draws the absolute heck out of him, and it's amazing.
He's a perfect fit for this book, and I'm really glad that he understood the pitch. I read again the foreword that you had for the book, and again, right. I don't know if that's just in the press variant or if everybody gets that when they get the first issue. As far as, you know, when you went, you know, pitching it initially to CB, and then finding yourself in the creative summits and everything, talking about it, and pitching it to Umberto in Mexico. I'm really glad, because he's a perfect fit for this book.
It really is. There was, like, at first it was, Umberto is the mountaintop of artists, right? Like he's such a professional. He's so good that at first it didn't even occur to me to think to ask for him because I thought it would be across the board no, you know, and not even from him because Umberto and I are close. The thing is I knew that he would be a perfect fit. I just didn't know if they would let him come down and play with my book, you know, because he's been drawing Spider-Man for the better part of 20 years. I mean, he kind of goes off and does a thing every now and then, but I mean, if you look back, he's been drawing one of the main Spider-Man books since like 2000, you know, which is crazy. But when I brought him up and they were like, well, I mean, it could possibly work. And I was like, oh, you should have cracked that door open for me. Because I'm a big guy, I'm going to kick that door in. And so like, I found myself in Mexico straight up like, here's my pitch, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, literally, he picked me up at the airport. And by the time we got out of the car at the hotel, it was already on. Like, he was already
That's
in.
awesome.
It was amazing. And it has blown my mind seeing pages from him. He sends a page every single day. So every day, I get to see a brand new piece of Umberto Ramos art. Like clockwork. It's amazing.
That's fantastic, man. I like Dave Fowley's question here. What kind of antagonist would be upset or feel threatened that a school like this exists?
That's a really good question. And it's going to be a very wide range. Right away, coming up, you're going to see some local and kind of old magic be a little... I'm going to say intrigued and hungry at the idea that a place this filled with this many connections to various magic sources is right under their nose now, and what they might do with that. So, because we haven't gotten very far into the series, I don't want to say too much about that first people, but I mean, you could definitely expect some Dormammu at some point. You know, there's going to be some fun old people. There's going to be some fun from characters from Jason Aaron's run. And we're really diving into all areas of like kind of the strange lore.
That's awesome, man. And also, it occurs to me when you say local, Dr. Voodoo, right? Isn't, because everything's happening in, is it Baton Rouge?
It's right there in New Orleans. Yeah. We're right there in the school is hidden in a courtyard in the French Quarter. That just looks like a rundown French Quarter but if you have one of your crests on, the school crest, then it will open the gate and you get to go in. And of course it's their cool, huge, you know, campus, which is really fun. And that was the other good thing. I didn't say it in the forward. I can't remember. It's been a while, but we all took a trip to New Orleans.
That I don't remember reading, but it could very well be. But go on, please talk about it.
Me and we're at
we have to go to New Orleans. I hope you understand.
We're at one of the retreats. And we pitched it, and everybody was really up on it. And they were like, "Okay, where's the book? Where's the book take place?" And I was like, you know, we talked about like, is it hidden in Central Park? You know, it's like the typical stuff, right? Like it's Marvel, so it will be in New York. And I just feel like I can't figure out a New York thing that's not been done, you know?
Sure.
And then it was like it wasn't even during the retreat. It was like the last day. And then afterwards, Umberto and I walked up to CB's office and we're waiting on CB. And he and I were just sitting there talking in CB's office while we were waiting on him to finish up and come meet us. And he, I just was like, I had just went to New Orleans for my 40th birthday. And that was the first time I had went. And I loved it. And so I had told Umberto, I was like, you know what? What if it was in New Orleans? That makes sense, right? There's a lot of history of kind of dark arts and magic and mystical stuff. And
sure.
And he's like, oh, that'd be cool. And then I was like, I could probably get us a trip. So we lined up, and it was me and Umberto and Nick and Danny and Kathleen, our editors. And, you know, at first everybody kind of like, oh yeah, sure. You guys are going down to do research. Right? Well, I'm going to tell you what, man, that 3 days that we spent as a creative team did so many things. Me and Umberto have been friends for years. So it was just another chance for us to be like personally hang out. But, we brought Casey along too to photograph for us. So reference and just photograph the scenes and everything. So, but being able to spend that many days with, you know, who you're going to be working with on the Marvel side, you know, and spending late nights and watching blues shows and going out on swamp boats and, you know, listening to 2 in the afternoon jazz stuff in a dingy place while drinking Hurricanes. Like, that's a bonding thing you can't trade in. And a trust building that you have now. Like when you see Kathleen, Kathleen's kind of a quiet woman. But then when you get her on a stage in the middle of Bourbon Street doing karaoke, you're like, whoa! And then you're afterwards like, I'm going to trust any note she ever gives me. Because I know deep down there's a monster right in her that's just ready to kick some ass, right? So there's a lot of great camaraderie, a lot of team building things that came from that I wasn't expecting. But then the other thing was, and there are direct buildings and direct plot points right now that exist because we went there, and I knew where these kids needed to be to have a certain thing happen. Because there was a person in this building that we went in, this little voodoo museum, and there was all these really cool things. And afterwards, I thought, again, I probably thought it was as a joke of a trip as anybody at the beginning, but by the end, and now that we're doing the book, it absolutely has helped shape the texture of the world that these kids are in, because they also aren't from there. So they're learning about themselves. They're learning about the school, and one of the weirdest, coolest places I think in the States. Like the kind of history that place has. So yeah,
100%.
It's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and again, we were teasing about it and stuff, but no, you're right. I mean, like the Voodoo Museum, exactly. There's tons of actual history there to mine, and I'm sure locations and things. And no, I'm sure you guys went.
Yeah, there was one place, I cannot remember what it was called at the moment. We have it written down. We have tons of photos from it, but it's like a tavern, like Blacksmith or something like that. And it's one of the oldest places there, and it doesn't have electricity.
Wow.
So, like, there's no lights. Like, so the bar at night is all candlelit.
Wow.
So like, we went there in the day and it was cool, but then we went back at night and it was all candlelit and it's pitch black in there, and there's somebody playing piano, and it was awesome. Like, yeah, man. Yeah. So there was definitely like I said, texture is like my favorite thing to say about it. It's like getting to feel the coarse texture of that place, and kind of hope that we can bring some of that to the characters and the stories and the plots was definitely a big help.
Dave Fowley keeps asking good questions. I like this one. Did you have a generational rift in mind in the approach to magic between students and teachers?
Yes, definitely. I don't know that it's definitely necessarily tied to magic as much as it is. I don't think that it's a shocker to see that a recurring theme in a lot of my work is, kids questioning adults, and especially teenagers questioning adults. And always one of my things have always been like, the X-Men are cool, but in the reality they're supposed to be teenagers, right? And really what they were doing was taking these teenagers and then throwing them as weapons at like big adult enemies, which is always crazy to me, right? And so yeah, there definitely is going to be a generational rift in perspective, just like there is always between the generations who come before us. We'll just have to see where that lands. I will say, while we're definitely going to have some cool, people from, Dr. Voodoo and Scarlet Witch and stuff like that, I do want to make clear, like, this is definitely a book about these kids, like these new characters and these new kids and these new situations. The rest of the cast is there to kind of help pepper in some, the Marvel lore that we all love, and to really guide these kids. But in the same way that if we all think back to when we were teenagers, we rarely gave a shit about the adults.
I understand, man. Well, and again, I think this is the right way to introduce new characters, because the framework is there with the old guard and stuff.
Right.
But that's fine. And honestly, I was talking about this with Matt Rosenberg last night and everything. Just that rough period around Secret Wars 2, when we had so many legacy characters being in the front of, like, Amadeus Cho is in the front of the Hulk book. Right. And it's, I mean, we still had teams where you had the young players, and I think that was good. But yeah, man, if you want to read an Iron Man story and Riri Williams is the lead, it's like, well, wait a minute, I came for a Tony Stark story. So I do think this is a good way to introduce these characters, much in the same way in previous incarnations and stuff. And now I'm blanking on the book that Bendis started, but then Hickman finished. And was it Secret War? Was it Secret Warriors? I think it was.
Oh yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah.
Where they were kind of introduced as new Shield, agents and stuff, and then okay, here they are, and now they're in their own book and stuff, and it's like, oh, this is good. And again, they're familiar enough in terms of where they come from, having the Asgardian twins, having Dr. Voodoo's great granddaughter, or however it works.
Right, and that's I think one of the things that I've always said, and these are kind of notes and things that I will give to people if they ask me for guidance on writing stories or creating characters or even designing a character. Is I have a real 70-30 rule, where any version of anything you do, you take 70% of things that people will get and understand, and then you pepper in 30% of something else. Right? You don't want too much of an even split. You don't want it too heavy. But this was like, I'm going to do 70% new kids coming of age, and I'm going to pepper in 30% of the thing that we all know and love. And then, and that's a nice perfect recipe. Nothing's too spicy, nothing's too mild. It's right there at the perfect place, I think.
Excellent, man. You see, Michael Perman, I think, has your bar. Lafitte's,
oh, there it is. That's it. Yep. He nailed it.
There you go, man. So they're listening. That's awesome. Very cool. Honestly, Skottie, I think this is great. Now, you guys managed to get the first issue out.
We did.
And, there's a new date for issue 2.
There is. I want to say it's July. July. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but I want to say that we're. You know what? I think it's June. I'm sorry. I was thinking.
I looked on Amazon, Skottie, and I don't know if it's changed, but they're saying July 8th.
July 8th. Okay. Yes, you're right. I was thinking of my Middle West issues, because those have new dates too. So all my new dates kind of came at me at once, and I was trying to figure out what's what.
Well, that's good. And honestly, I do want to talk about creator-owned stuff as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, let's talk. Talk to me about Middle West and everything, and how.
Yeah, Middle West, man. Middle West is one of the most proud projects I've ever had. I think, or that I've been most proud to have accomplished. It's drawn by Jorge Corona, who I'm going to do 1 million books with from now on until he realizes he doesn't need me. Colored by Jean-Francois Bilot, who's colored almost everything I've been involved with since 2006. He's my ride or die. Lettered by Nate Picos from Blambot, who also is, these guys know that if I do books and they want to do books, we'll all do books together. Edited by my friend Kent Wagon Shoots. Middle West is a story of Abel and his father Dale, and it's really, on the surface it kind of looks like somewhat of a fantasy, urban or rural fantasy book. But at the heart of it, it's really a story about a young kid trying to break the cycle of abuse in generations of families, and in particular, this story of men, and kind of sometimes how different generations have dealt with emotions, and how sometimes we pour those emotions back out on our children, and how that can domino effect through generations, and until somebody comes along and recognizes it and wants to try to stop that. So it's about that, and anybody who's read anything on it and knows me, it's a wildly personal story with a lot of things that are real to me injected in that book. So there's been 16 issues out, and we finished the last 2. But then, the apocalypse came upon us,
right?
And we didn't.
Oh, yeah. I love that SpongeBob movie.
Did you watch it again?
Yeah.
All right. So we got to the place where we're like super proud, we're ready to celebrate, and then all of a sudden we get shut down in our last 2 issues of the entire run. Like, it's the end of the story. Our 17 and 18 were paused, and so we have new dates for them. Mm-hmm. But it's a big story. It's filled with heart and laughter and crying and tears, and it's, like I said, I'm proud of every single thing I've ever done. But this one, because I found myself in a place to be able to kind of open up and tap into some different kind of stuff that people are used to seeing from me on the comic book making front. he's going to start like chatting as he plays
Oh,
games.
good, buddy. No, it's cool. No,
Um, So the Middle West is that. So 17 and 18 are going to be due out, I think, either June and July or July and August, something like that.
okay, yeah. Here, let's see. I guess.
Look at Michael Purble, man. Michael Purble has been such a good supporter of me over the years. He's such a good guy. But he's coming in with the dates right here. June 24th for Middle West 17.
There you go, man. And it's funny because Dave asked this question, and I was already going to get to it, so you'll forgive me, Dave. I'm going to ask the question.
Right.
It's interesting because 18 issues for this. Are you finding a sweet spot with these creator-owned things? I mean, is this the length you wanted, Middle West to be?
Yes, Middle West was exactly this. I know, because it can go either way, right? Like sometimes people think, oh, I got canceled, the sales weren't good enough, or blah, blah, blah. But Middle West always had an end. We knew exactly where it was going to end. When I sat down, when we had our first conversations about it, and I did a light mapping, I was like, this feels like it's going to be, 18 to 20 issues, somewhere in that zone. And because we were doing 6-issue arcs, so once I got going, I was like, you know what, 18 feels really right. It's 3 books. Yep. At the end, then we will collect, because it is one beginning and middle and end story, we'll collect those 3 books into a really nice hardcover, so you'll have the whole book. So that was definitely the plan for that. I Hate Fairyland was my first creator-owned book, which I did 20 issues. So I did 4 trades and 2 hardcovers. Yep. But that's a book that I can jump back into at any time because of the nature of the style of storytelling. That was kind of like a lot of one and dones. It was more episodic in the same way that we would watch any of our favorite animated series. Like, you don't know what you're going to see week to week. So with I Hate Fairyland, I didn't necessarily have 20 as the end, but I also wrote and drew and produced. And for the majority of that time, I didn't even have an editor. I was handling everything myself or a project manager. So by the time I got to 20, I was like exhausted. Because part of that time that I was making that, I was also writing Rocket Raccoon. And then part of the time of working on it, I was also writing Deadpool. Yeah. And I was doing, I don't know how many covers, 304,000 covers.
I'm sure. Absolutely, man.
That book was exhausting, but it was so fun. But I did get to a point where I was like, I think I need to pause this for a little bit. So I found like a really fun ending for 20. But even at the last page, I wrote like, don't expect this to be it forever. Like, I'll definitely come back to this at some point.
That's great, man. I'll tell you, one of my good friends who was a lapsed comic reader of yours, Fairyland, is one of the reasons why he came back. And
I love that.
At every C2E2 and stuff. So, yeah, I'll be happy to hear that. Absolutely.
I hear that a lot about. About Fairyland. Hold on, I'm gonna quit this Slack.
No problem, buddy. Sure. No, it's good, man. You're working. God bless you, son.
Like, people see like chatting, and of course it's just like, what? I know. I'm going to be done in just a little bit, and then we'll hang out. You want to watch a movie?
I already did.
You want to come be on the show with John?
Did.
You want to come be on the show live?
Yeah, come on over and say hello to everybody, man.
Come over and say hi to everybody.
You're already part of the show.
Oh. Oh.
Hi.
Hi, John.
John.
Oh.
Hi, man.
Now, why are you hiding now?
Yeah, let's look at the camera, my man. There you go. Attaboy.
This is with him, ready? Okay. All right. You go. I'm almost done, okay? Go up and ask you to play Nintendo.
Outstanding.
Can I see what he's doing? Can I sit with him?
Yeah, go sit with him.
Fantastic. Honestly, dude, I love this. This is why
this is
video.
It's real life stuff, man.
Absolutely. It proves that we're actually alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, so 20 issues of Fairyland and what,
Yeah, we got to 20 issues. I got to 20 issues and I just felt like, okay, I need a little bit of a break. And at this point also, I mean, I had been drawing interiors of comics I started at Marvel at 2001 and I'd just been drawing monthly comics for that long. And everything had kind of like come to a place where I saw an opening for me to take a step back from interior pages for a little while and kind of refresh myself and fall in love with it again. Cause I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to be like, oh, boo-hoo. It's not like that, but man, drawing comics is really hard. Like, it's super hard and it takes forever. It's never ending, right? And most of the time when you're doing it, you're watching all your friends. They're telling 5 stories every month. Like, they're getting all this out of them.
The writers.
Yeah, they're like, I'm telling this story and a cosmic story and a space story and a desert story and a post about, all these stories. And then like, I'm like, cool, page 2. It's like, and so there was I was like, you know what? Everything's going well. I'm doing a lot of covers. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And so I found myself in a really good place to be able to take a break from interiors for a little bit and just write. So that's when, I'd been cooking on Middle West for a while, and I had Bully Wars in my back pocket for about 10 years. And so I talked to Aaron and I talked to Jorge, and they were both down. And that was really cool. And then, after have taken a couple, I did Fairyland for a couple of years and kind of took a break from Marvel books. I just wrote Rocket for a while.
Yep. Rocket,
Raccoon, and Groot. And then they came back to me and offered me the monthly Deadpool gig. Right. And I was like, well, this is really good timing because I can get on Deadpool writing, but then write these other 2 creator-owned books and do covers, and there it is. There's my, there's my job for a while,
Sure.
And that was a perfect timing for a time where I wanted to try to see if financially I could take a break from drawing pages for a while. And it's good. And I've been off of pages for about 2 years, and now I'm itching to draw books again.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. And, honestly, Skottie, I really felt this way, especially when you were doing Rocket and Groot, but honestly, you could say that about Bully Wars and also Middle West and everything. Mm-hmm. You always find these artists that convey your style.
Sure.
They are very distinct in their own art, and obviously Umberto, his stuff speaks for itself. But it really is. They feel like Skottie Young stories, even though these are other artists and everything.
Right. And stuff. I think that just comes from the fact that I have I travel in circles of where we all come from the same influences, and we all watch the same movies growing up, and we all read the same books. So, and that means this kind of stories I tell when I go looking for the people who will fit it, they're clearly going to be in the camp that we all grew up in, Jorge's interesting because I met him when he was in college. Him and his friend, who's now his wife, had driven from the Savannah campus up to the Atlanta campus when I was down there speaking to kind of hang out with us at a bar. And I remember him being there, and then we met another time, and then I realized, like, man, this guy's really good, and kept my eye on him over the years. And then, of course, when it came time to I had asked him to do a book with me before I even had the idea for a book. I was like, I don't have an idea yet, but I super want to write a book with you one day. So, but yeah, no, I think that's one of for whatever skills I lack in actual writing, I make up for in being able to find and pick and talk amazing artists into working with me to make me look better. So.
That's cool. Now, Steve McCoy asks a question. He's been a fan of yours since, I'm assuming AC means the Around Comics days.
Yeah.
That's my guess. Is there a character you've been itching to take a stab at that you haven't had the chance yet?
Yeah, I mean, not at Marvel. I don't think there's. It's interesting. The interesting thing about Marvel is I would need to take a real big step back and dig in some crates, I think, over there. Because I've had a chance to touch a lot of characters at Marvel, especially just drawing the covers I've been doing. I've done over 400 of them. So at some point I've drawn every character that Marvel has. This is, nobody wants to hear this because I'm Marvel exclusive, but I mean, obviously it'd be really cool to write and draw a Batman story, or Lobo's one of my favorite characters. But that being said, honestly, because I've been at Marvel for so long, really the thing I'm itching to do is always come up with a new thing. Like, that's why finally being in the creator-owned side of things, as well as having my home set up at Marvel, is it's great because I get to scratch all the itches. I mean, Strange Academy is a really cool way to do that because I can kind of go grab anybody I want for the most part.
Sure.
And so I get to do that, but really the thing I'm always itching to do is like just make new stuff up, you know?
Well, and I think too, I wanted to say this when you were discussing your interiors. One of the reasons why I think maybe your art takes so long is you take so much care with each panel. I mean, so many other artists, and sometimes I think it's an incorrect knock from some fans where they're like, "Well, that's the same background on these
Sure.
several panels and stuff like that." You never do that,
Sure. Well,
and
like,
really, man, I mean, that's and truly, watching you in the 16 years or 14 years that I've known you,
yeah,
it's been fun watching your art evolve, and even those initial Marvel stories where you would only do like an 8-page interior thing or something
right.
like that. It was like, holy Christ, look at this, man.
It's
I
like,
mean, that's a great, and certainly the Oz books were like that. You and Shanauer and stuff, and all the
yeah.
things that your own interpretation of the bomb world.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, Oz was awesome. I will always say that's responsible for everything for me. That changed my whole life. Like that was
Really,
for sure. Yeah.
in what ways?
It was just so odd and unexpected. And again, I've told the story before, but it's been a very long time now because I can't believe how long that book was ago when we started it. I got that job offer a night after Tom Caters and his wife, Sam, came over to our house to watch Return to Oz, which was crazy because who has a night where you invite people over to watch Return to Oz and then the next day you get a call from Marvel saying, "Hey, I think we know what your next job is. We want to adapt the Wizard of Oz novels." And I was like, what? Like at the time I'm drawing X-Men and they're like, "Oh, but next you'll do the Oz books." And I'm like, what? Little do they know, like that's my favorite kind of material. I'm not really a superhero guy. I was always like a weird fairy tale guy. A never-ending story and the labyrinth and a Henson guy. And like, that's what I grew up with.
Sure.
In Mad Magazine. So I was always either like really kind of satire parody or like weird puppet fantasy stuff, you know? But I found my way into Marvel and then I'm drawing superhero comics, which I also like to read, but I never really felt like I was a super fit for that. So Oz was a situation where they were trying to get a different market and get in the kids market and go this, the bookstores, all these kind of different goals. And then when they offered me the job, I turned it down for a bunch of times for about 2 weeks because I was like, kids book don't sell. Why are you trying to get rid of me? I just felt like I was getting thrown away. Like, I was like, kids books don't sell. At the time, the Marvel Illustrated line was not blazing up the charts of any,
Yep.
And that's at the beginning, it was going to be called that. And they ended up not calling that because when I started turning the pages, it looked so different from what they had been doing with the Marvel Illustrated. So they dropped that. So there wasn't a lot of crossover there. But because when I finally agreed to do it and they gave me all the time I wanted and they let us do the amount of issues we did 8 issues per arc. Who does that? Like at Marvel, nobody. But I said, let's do 8 issues. They were like, okay. It's just weird things that were going on then. And so then when I started turning in, the other thing, they were like, you can do it in any style you want. And I just felt like people don't know this now. I have people talk to me now that they'll say like, well, yeah, of course, but you're you. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think you guys remember, like, there was a time where literally drawing cartoony was a death nail. Like, I mean, I had calls from bosses saying, if you keep drawing like this, you're definitely not going to have a job. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, I'm not that good. I can't just change. Like, this isn't integrity talking. I'm not drawing a line in the sand. I'm telling you, like, I'm not Stuart Immonen who can draw like the best in 55 styles, right?
I hear you, bud. Yeah.
So getting told like, okay, if you come and do this book, this, and this will happen. You'll have all the time that you need. You can draw however you want. And like all these things were going on. I was like, okay, fine. I'll do it. You let me give me a cover gig in the regular Marvel U. So I still stay. Cause I really truly thought none of these books would sell. Like I just thought it would disappear. So if you gave me a cover gig on something, I would at least remind people for the next year that I didn't die, right? Or I didn't vanish. So they gave me Cable and Deadpool covers and some Iron Man and Spider-Man adventure covers. So
Dude, those Armor Wars, as I've told you, and I even made you recreate one of your covers
right.
for me.
Yeah.
Tony holding the head. The
Yeah,
helmet.
the helmet. Yeah.
Seriously, man, it's truly one of my absolute favorite images.
Thank
you've
you
ever
so
done.
much, man. Yeah. So doing those covers, started teaching me how to craft covers that sell on a shelf. So that was a really good experience. That changed my life. And being able to sit in a room and create things without any sort of expectations of audience. What I'm saying is I basically benefited from thinking that it wasn't going to be a thing. So I really just drew whatever I wanted.
I understand.
And because of that, I feel like we made something really special. And then, of course, when it started coming out, I think the combination of all those things and the mindsets actually turned us into creating something super special because we weren't attempting to make something super special.
Yeah. Well, you believed in yourself, and you believed
right.
in Skottie. That has always been a hallmark of you. In that, I've loved this about you. And if I'm getting the characterization wrong, tell me. But it always seemed like they might pitch you something, and you're like, it's just not speaking to me. And you were always respectful about it, but you would pass on things. Yeah. And I think that made them appreciate you more. And like, all right, what can we find? Because they obviously wanted to work with you and stuff. And it just seemed like this evolution of, all right, well, maybe something else will work. And let's find something that you'll want to do.
Well, that's another thing that Oz really did for me was it taught me doing that. And I did that we did that together for 5 years.
Yeah, you and Eric absolutely.
We won 4 Eisners with that. I won 4 Eisners with that over the years. We were on the New York Times bestsellers list for years with that. And we, at times we were outselling the summer events with our trades and our hardcovers, right? I remember Ed Brubaker would always be like, we're in those retreats looking at the things and we're all beating our chest. And then you and Eric just ping, ping, ping. But what really worked, what it did for me afterwards was it gave me the confidence to know what I like to do and what I'm good at. And it took away the career ladder. Like I stopped looking at being a comic book artist or comic book writer or any of those things as a career ladder. And then after that, I was just a cartoonist that wanted to make things. So right after Oz, when Oz was getting ready to end, and we decided like, okay, well, this is a good stopping point. It was like, cool. Well, what do you want to do next? I was like, I'm not sure, but I definitely want to write and draw what I do next. And I remember them being like, well, listen, like Brian's cool with it. It would be really cool if you did like an arc or 2 on Guardians because they had just launched Guardians, right? And the movie stuff wasn't out yet. We didn't know. We didn't see any images yet. It was all, but Brian and Steve had just launched Guardians, and I don't even know if Sarah was on there yet. I can't remember if Sarah launched at the beginning. Anyway, there's Pacelli and Steve and Brian, and they were like, you should go in. I mean, Brian would give an arm to have you come on. And Brian and I were close then. And it's just what you just said. I was like, oh, I mean, that would be cool, but no. Because it didn't make any sense, right? Steve is, this isn't me being like, oh, I'm not as good. That's not what I mean. I mean, like Steve is amazing and Sarah is amazing and they do these great things and it matched what Brian was doing. I did not fit that math. Like that equation it didn't fit me. And I knew that, and it didn't fit with me either. I was a huge fan of that book and I was a huge fan of all involved. And it was one of those things where it's like, no, I need to know when I don't fit into equation. Back in 5 years earlier, I would have forced myself into equations. Like, what are you saying? I can't draw Avengers and make them look all like melted butter, I want to do wacky cartoony, I had an arrogant attitude in my 20s, like all books are meant for cartoony people or whatever. Right? And then I got to a point where I was like, why did I even want that? That's a careerist way of thinking, right? Where you're just like, if I could just keep climbing this ladder. But Oz taught me to be like, you should always do what feels like home to you and feels like whatever. Oz taught me that work doesn't have to be frustrating. Before Oz, I felt like coming to the table every day was like, ugh, I got to do another page, which you don't want to feel that way drawing comic books, you know? So Oz changed my life in a lot of ways like that, which just gave me like a little bit more of a grounded sense of like who I am as a storyteller, you know?
I understand. Look who's here, our buddy from Reed.
What's up, Mike?
Mike Nagan, one of the great Artist Alley men that keep the cons running on time. We miss him.
He's such a champ, man. I was glad that we at least got to send out the con season. Who would have known that was going to be our last hurrah, was hanging out with Mike. Literally that Sunday night, the last night, sitting there chilling with Mike before we all called it a night after. God, I don't, Mike, it had to be what, 2 a.m. maybe we were up at Sunday night down there. Yeah, it was. It's always good seeing Mike, man. He has one of the biggest hearts of anybody in this business.
You're 100% right. I completely agree. He's been coming on the podcast with Art and Franco that we do.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And he's always a good voice on there. I'm glad, again, back to C2E2, because we had a conversation the Thursday before the show.
Sure.
And man, I was a fly on the wall, but I really appreciated what you said, where one of the creators was like, man, I've been doing this for like 20 years. I still got to pitch. And it really like frustrates me, man. I mean, like, shouldn't people know if I walk in the door with a pitch to at least, meet me halfway, or however he put it? And you're like, no, man, you really got to pitch no matter what. And I'm kind of glad you said that. Yeah. And I think it's something that any creator at any point out right now on the spectrum, wherever they are, need to be reminded of. Man, you got to come with your best, bat and be ready to hit one out of the park when you pitch.
Yeah,
they can't just trust you on it,
I think you got to come. I think you got to step onto the court every time, ready to dunk on everybody. Every time you get the ball, you know what I mean? Like every single time, I just want to my goal is to Sean Kemp on you every single time the ball. That shows you how old I am. I'm Sean Kemp's my reference.
You're doing basketball. I'm doing baseball. You're doing much better than I am, man.
I steered you as like, I got no baseball references, John. You know this about me. I don't got no baseball references.
Are you watching The Last Dance?
Oh yeah. It's amazing,
dude. And seriously, and forgive me for the sidetrack for a second, but I was covering that story in the 90s.
Sure, yeah.
Score. And it is so great to watch it and refresh that perspective and everything.
Well, and I love seeing them be far enough away from it where they can be honest without getting themselves in hot water. Sometimes they're like, they're regretful. I mean, I love seeing like how much animosity there still is with Isaiah. That's crazy.
Oh yeah. Well, and we'll see how honest, because honestly, Skottie, those years that Jordan was away and playing baseball and stuff,
right?
There's a lot of dirty stuff in there. And I know Jordan's company co-produced it, so I'm going to see.
No.
It's going to be very interesting how the wilderness years are handled and stuff. And and honestly, I look forward to it. I don't blame, people not wanting to air their own dirty laundry. It'll be very interesting.
Well, we got 4 more episodes, right? 4 more episodes?
Yeah, I had to do the math in my head. Yeah,
5 and 6 just came out. There's 10 total.
All right, but back to what we were talking about in terms of, you really have to come.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's easy for us, and I won't even say that I don't fall victim to it sometimes, and I need to be reminded. And sometimes the industry comes along and reminds me. I mean, not every book of mine, it crushes it. Like, and I've got to be okay with going like, Aaron and I on Bully Wars really wanted to do, 6 arcs on that. Like we had that planned out forever. And when we got the numbers back, we are absolutely proud of every single word and line that we put in that book. And we still stand behind it as a great book, but it was an all ages book through Image, which has done a lot. Hard to market, hard to do the things. It did not work. And we had to throw in the towel way earlier than we wanted. And we had to say, I couldn't be mad that people didn't get it. I couldn't be mad that people didn't show up. They didn't. And I got to figure out how to take some responsibility for that on my own, and see, what did I do wrong? What did I do right, but should do different next time? Those are things that, like, if I'm going to make it the full ride, you know what I mean, in this business, then I have to be willing to say, like, I fucked this up, or, you know what, this wasn't it. Or if I pitch something and just are like, nah, it's not our jam, I just got to be like, well, all right. Like, and be okay with being like, oh, cool. If this many things are coming to tell me this, then the common denominator is that I'm getting it wrong. and maybe I should, I should pivot. I think
Yeah.
Robert said this once. Oh, it's probably one of my things. Like the best thing that a creator can ever learn is how to pivot. Meaning, if you're going down one way and it's not working, you should not be afraid to pivot. That's another basketball reference. But yeah, so I really do believe that, especially when we're still young and relatively young and still got a little fight in us, we should absolutely be attempting to dunk on everybody every time out. And if we brick it, if we get rejected, we can't blame them. We've got to be like, I didn't bring it hard enough that time. I got to try harder next time. It's like, okay, we're going to bring basketball back into this. It's like, I look at myself now no different than what Jordan and the Bulls felt like when the Pistons absolutely were like physically demolishing them, right? Just beating them up.
Yep.
And instead of going off for the summer and chilling out, the Bulls went Michael Jordan. If everybody remembers, it was like, what was it, 88, 87, something like Michael Jordan.
89, yeah.
He was so skinny. He was just a skinny, great basketball player. And then all of a sudden, one year, he was jacked. And they all went to the gym, him, Pippen. All of a sudden, these guys were not getting pushed around anymore. The Pistons, who were the bad boys, they tried to lay it all over. And the Bulls were like, not this time. We went and we got too used to Jordan being great, but they also got beat up. So he was like, cool, I'm good, but I've got to be better. And I think that's, to me, what I hope that I can come across. Like I said, I don't succeed at it all the time. And I can drink my own fucking Kool-Aid as much as the next person. But sometimes I got to remember, like, oh shit, there's a little poison in that Kool-Aid. I gotta flush my system out and reboot.
But yeah, man, again, that's where I think you're smart and you're reading the market well. Now with Bully Wars, would you, and I don't even know, is there a pipeline like to a Scholastic or something?
That's absolutely what we're talking about now. I have my book agent looking into that a little bit, and of course, I've got ins with some animation companies and things like that because I think there's a home out there for that. And sometimes the other thing is just knowing where your home is. I really wanted to be the person who came in with an all ages book and image and was like, bam, and selling saga numbers with the kids book.
Sure.
And we didn't, and that's fine. And we have a really, really great book out of it, and we will find another home for it because the next couple stories that we have planned for that are just really, really fun.
Outstanding, man. No, I'm glad to hear that. And again, it's understanding where the right place is to put something.
Sure, yeah, for sure.
So I always quote Hickman. Books are on the shelf for different reasons. But they're very different books, and they're there for very different reasons.
Jonathan is my brother, man. He's one of my best friends, and in I think so early on we clicked in a lot of ways because he's such an art lover. People probably forget this now, but because we follow Jonathan since the beginning. Jonathan is an artist himself and a really good one and a great, great designer.
Absolutely.
And so, Jonathan and I would always hook up at conventions when we first became friends, and we would just go art book hunting. So that's really how our friendship kind of blossomed. But then it's that we're both kind of business junkies. Like we love, and by business, I don't mean, again, like careerism, not climbing the ladder that way, but like I like the hustle of things. Like for people who don't know, like when I was a kid, I rented when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, I rented my cassette tapes out to people because video stores have video. You remember VHS stores started coming up, right? Like home rental places. And, I think there's a reptile. Come on.
Up your butt.
Oh, what did you do? What is that?
Hey!
What? Oh my gosh!
Oh my goodness!
Show
I like it.
What is it? Bakey.
I like him.
All right, go with her. Daddy's almost done, and I'll get you.
Almost done, my man.
Can Dad make a video of me?
Yeah, go up and make one more video, and then it's bedtime, okay?
Can you go tell him?
No, because I'm doing this, but just tell him that Daddy said to make a video with me.
Okay.
All right.
Rent your cassettes, and I'm assuming because
yes, so the VCR came out, and my dad came home with like Never Ending Story and a couple things. So I was like, "What is it?" Like, "Oh, there's a video rental place." And then ours was literally called Small Town Video, and we'd ride our bikes up. And I'm a big music fan as well. So any holiday or any paper route money, I would either buy Mad Magazine, Archie Comics, or cassette tapes. And I had a pretty decent collection of cassette tapes. And then I kind of looked at the concept of the video store. And was like, my friends always want to borrow tapes, or they want to tape a tape. And so I was like, I came up with a system of like, I'd bring, remember the tape, they look like briefcases, right?
Sure.
The old cases. So I would bring that to class every day. And I had a list taped to the side of my desk of the catalog. So if you were like near, you could just look over at my desk and see the thing, and then you'd give me $1, and then you could have a tape for a week, and then you bring it back to me. And that's, that's fourth, because I had a paper route from fourth grade on. I rented my cassette tape. So I've always been, I like the hustle of figuring out how to control your own destiny and make money and create stuff. And then when I got older and I started buying turntables, I sold mixtapes out of my backpack at college campuses, even though I didn't go to college.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I've always been that, and then that's. I mean, comics to me is the same thing. It's like it's slinging mixtapes. It's renting cassettes. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Absolutely. I see on the clock. I want to let you go because I know you said that you want to be able to, put the
you know me. I can lean into a 3-hour conversation as much as anybody.
My man, there's plenty of time to do that.
I would love to come back on. I would love to come back on, John. It's always great catching up with you. And for those people who don't know, I'm on like week 3 of working all day with these 2 knuckleheads. Only my wife is tending to family and holding down the fort with our family. So it's a team effort during this apocalypse. But I would love to come back on anytime, man.
Absolutely, Skottie. No, you can count on it, man. And as always, Strange Academy first issue is out, and issue 2 comes out in June.
Yep.
And then or July 8th.
July, yep.
And then I'm getting my dates mixed up and everything, but looking forward to that, and also the great image projects to come. But yeah, Skottie, always a pleasure, and thank you for our 14 years of friendship, and
thank you, buddy.
Thank you for being a big part of Word Balloon, man. And truly, we'll reconvene and we'll talk longer. But it's always
absolutely, man. Reach out anytime you need anything.
Thanks, brother. All right, Skottie Young, everybody. Thank you very much, Skottie. And I'll remind people that coming up, we'll be talking to some journalists on Friday. 2 different sessions. Heidi McDonald will be joining me at 1 p.m. Central during the day because Heidi's a busy woman. And we'll be talking about the comics market and see what's going on and get her point of view of that. And then my former colleague from Newsarama, Vanita Rogers, will be joining me in the evening for another session. And I wanted to get their points of view of what's going on. And they're right there on the front lines talking to retailers and creators and publishers and maybe give me a better perspective of what's going on as this ever-changing comic market evolves during the lockdown. So as always, I thank you very much for your attention tonight. Great questions, everybody. I really appreciate everyone coming on and joining me. And thank you. And I hope if you like this, go to Word Balloon's YouTube channel and subscribe and share this with your friends if you would. That would be great. And otherwise, as always, Peter Janis, everybody. Peter Janis from Nutria High saying hello with a big thumbs up. I appreciate it. My Greek brother. Good to see you, my man. Thank you very much. My cousin Joni checked in yesterday, too. I didn't want to get too gratuitous, but the fact that I'm wrapping things up right now solo because Skottie had to put the kid to bed. But, so what else can I tell you is coming up? Joe Pruitt from Aftershock Comics. Great conversation with him about the philosophy of Aftershock. You might notice that Justice League Dark, the animated movie, just came out. There's a bonus short on the video with Adam Strange, and our buddy J.M. DeMatteis adapted that. He also, of course, did a great death short that was on Wonder Woman Bloodlines, and, of course, adapted Superman Red Sun. We talk about J.M. DeMatteis' animation stuff in the coming days here on Word Balloon. And then also a very cool guy from Canadian television, Rick Green, who worked on the Red Green Show and was a great member of one of my favorite Canadian sketch groups, the Frantics. But in between, he did an incredible show on Canadian public television called Prisoners of Gravity. You can find examples of it on YouTube, where he did amazing interviews with sci-fi creators, not just comic book people, but novelists as well, and film people and television people. Really great show, great examples of it on YouTube. And it was great to talk to him about Prisoners of Gravity. So that'll be coming in the days ahead as well. Plus, I got a whole bunch of other new talks scheduled coming up here on Word Balloon. Thanks a lot for watching, really. And it's been a great response to the Word Balloon live videos that I've been doing since the lockdown. Hey, just trying to give us something to watch and get our minds off of things. Everybody stay safe and healthy, and I will talk to you soon. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Thanks again for watching another Word Balloon video. We've got plenty more at our channel, Word Balloon. If you enjoyed it, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, support me on Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thanks a lot for watching.